Before I end, I want to share that even though my talk today was about the war in Lebanon, this is not a humanitarian call. This is not a humanitarian talk either. It's about how we have built human rights-based systems and about peace building. We learned that delivering mental health services rebuilds trust, restores dignity, and allows us, maybe, just maybe, to imagine living a future without violence. Lebanon's story is really one of leadership. It shows us that innovation is not the privilege of living in a stable country. It is the practice of perseverance, and that mental health should not be an afterthought in war, but it is actually the architecture of recovery. Good morning, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends. As I stand here, a few thousand miles away from home, Lebanon, which is a small country in the global south, my mind is divided between the privilege of being here, engaging in this global dialogue on innovation, equity, and compassion, and also the unfolding reality back home. As I listen to our inspiring discussions about building brain capital, about how lived experiences are meaningfully shaping and transforming mental health care delivery across the world, and how we are reimagining investment and financing for mental health. And as I move from one hall to the next, there are some words that unfortunately are missing from our sessions. And some of these words are political aggression, structural determinants, and geopolitics. The forces that so often, unfortunately, make the work of mental well-being pursuit almost impossible. And the reality is that I glimpse every few minutes between the stage and my phone in my hands, and I read more notifications, names of villages that are being bombed, including my own hometown, WhatsApp messages from our mobile mental health teams on the ground, checking roads and safety, and deciding whether to continue their work on the field or go back to safety. At the same time, families are still fleeing from their half-built homes, once again, in search of shelter. But this time, all of this is happening with no media coverage, no humanitarian response, and no international support. This juxtaposition between standing here on the stage, glimpsing back on my phone, and between policy and lived experience should, I believe, be at the core of our conversation on global mental health. And this is a reminder, perhaps, that we're not doing enough of that. Because conversations about brain health and cognitive ergonomics, which, by the way, is a term that I learned here yesterday, cannot be detached from the structural violence and political aggression that are continuously undermining them. Exactly 1 year ago, Lebanon witnessed one of the fastest mass displacement in modern history. Within 48 hours, 1.2 million fled their homes as the war escalated. Within 2 months, 4,400 people had been killed and 16,000 had been injured, including 167 first responders who were targeted while performing their humanitarian work in clear violation of international humanitarian law. But these, unfortunately, were not Lebanon's first wounds. The country has already been staggering under a severe economic crisis since 2019, the Beirut blast explosion in 2020, and of course, the lingering impacts of the pandemic. Like many countries we've heard about in the past few days, we also face a severe shortage of mental health professionals and severe inequities in delivery of care between urban and rural areas. The most recent data as well is quite alarming from the country. 3 out of 5 Lebanese today are screening positive for mental health condition. And this is a dramatic rise from the 1 in 4 statistic that we reported 2 decades ago. Despite this compounding adversity, Lebanon's mental health system has still demonstrated remarkable resilience. Even under bombardment, the National Lifeline for emotional support and suicide prevention continued to remain active 24/7, staffed by youth volunteers, many of them who were serving even after losing their own homes. Our national mental health emergency mechanism teams more than doubled their field deployments, delivering critical and life-saving psychiatric care to displaced families in overcrowded shelters. And clinicians worked under fire, ensuring the continuity of psychotropic medication and treatment for displaced individuals who were already living with chronic and severe mental health conditions and who had to flee their homes without their medications. I speak of this not as humanitarian aid. This represents the harvest of years of health system strengthening that we have been doing back home, cross-sectoral collaboration between civil society organizations, academia, and government to build the kind of structures I described here and that are capable of enduring even in war. However, unfortunately, conflict inevitably tests our systems, which were not supposed to be built and to function under bombardment. And these contexts do offer lessons for the global community and for us here today. Our recent publication, Adapting Psychiatric Practice in War Zones, documents some of these experiences and provides some evidence on how psychiatric care can and maybe should evolve under extreme conditions. So this is a little bit of what we have learned through our work. We learned that war forces us to rethink ethics in real time. Our clinicians were addressing acute mental health needs in overcrowded shelters and had to choose between ideal ethics and immediate care. Privacy, confidentiality, safety, preserving dignity, all of these, which are the cornerstones of our medical practice, were impossible to uphold. In these moments, we redefined our do no harm oath into doing less harm. That principle on its own, which was born from necessity, should make us rethink global humanitarian psychiatry frameworks. Our training, unfortunately, rarely prepares us for these moral tensions. And from this, there is an urgent need to institutionalize crisis psychiatry curricula globally. We need to start equipping our mental health professionals with the knowledge to make ethical and clinical decisions, not only in the safety of the private clinic, but also in unstable environments, and to learn how to integrate crisis communication, humanitarian ethics, and community-based intervention as part of their core competencies. We often discuss task shifting. I heard a lot of those conversations happening between these halls, but in conflict settings, do we need to reconsider reverse task shifting, where specialists must also be equipped to deliver foundational psychosocial care when needed, as we witnessed. We also learned that stigma, my colleague was just talking multitudes about it, which is already pervasive in times of peace, does not disappear in times of war, but it deepens. Even in crisis, many people we saw feared being labeled crazy or weak. Our clinicians adapted. We reframed mental health as coping with stress, as managing fear, and adapting in crisis. No, we did not use words or diagnoses or labels, but focused on things like sleep, loss, and resilience. Gradually, what we noticed is that the individuals who we were seeing in shelters began to slowly seek and request follow-up sessions, and even advocated for other displaced individuals to seek mental health care. Now, that shift from silence to agency reflects the global mental health agenda of mental health literacy, when communities really begin to understand that mental health is part of daily life and not a mark of shame. And remarkably, we were able to do this even under the bombardment. What we also learned that war magnifies the role of culture and faith in how distress is expressed and healed. Many describe their suffering as a test of faith or divine punishment. I really stood for a few minutes when a displaced person said, "If this is a test, God, I'm failing, and if it's a punishment, what did I do wrong?" Clinicians, in the face of these kinds of statements, adopted, of course, a culturally sensitive approach, framing faith as a source of resilience rather than a barrier to care. This is at the essence of context-sensitive care, healing that aligns with cultural and spiritual realities. But again, this is not part of the core curricula of mental health professional training programs, and we don't see this being implemented often. Finally, I would like to highlight that our work also extended and our learnings also extended to the well-being of those providing care. And we did hear a lot of that over the last few days. Our clinicians were both healers and survivors. Many of them lost homes, family members, and were also displaced alongside the patients that they were seeing. We learned that caring for the caregiver is not a luxury, it's a public health necessity. As one of our psychiatrists and team members marked, you cannot ask people to stay calm under fire if you haven't found calm within yourself first. The duty of care for mental health professionals must be institutionalized through supervision, peer debriefing, rest protocols, financial incentives, and psychological support systems that can prevent moral injury and burnout. Finally, our experiences from Lebanon really underscore several global policy implications that I hope we can work together on and learn from the summit and other summits to come. First, the importance of integrating mental health into national disaster preparedness. Fortunately, we had begun to start doing part of that in Lebanon, but still it was not enough. And also, I would like us to also consider integrating this into our global policy dialogues as well. We need to invest in crisis psychiatry curricula more, equipping our professionals with the knowledge and competencies to navigate ethical, logistical, and cultural challenges in humanitarian context, and not only within private settings. We need to work on enhancing cultural competence and contextual sensitivity in all global training frameworks, and to institutionalize really the protection of our mental health workforce. Finally, I hope we can make use in future summits of more South-to-South collaboration to create mechanisms for our countries to share expertise from Lebanon to Gaza to Sudan, and allow us others to also learn from the indigenous models of care that we are developing under crisis. Before I end, I want to share that even though my talk today was about the war in Lebanon, this is not a humanitarian call. This is not a humanitarian talk either. It's about how we have built human rights-based systems and about peace building. We learned that delivering mental health services rebuilds trust, restores dignity, and allows us, maybe, just maybe, to imagine living a future without violence. Lebanon's story is really one of leadership. It shows us that innovation is not the privilege of living in a stable country. It is the practice of perseverance, and that mental health should not be an afterthought in war, but it is actually the architecture of recovery. Thank you.